TV7 Israel News is made possible thanks to your generous donations. Shalom, good evening. This is TV7 Israel News broadcast to you from Jerusalem. And in today's top stories, Israel commemorates its annual Holocaust Remembrance Day in memory of the 6 million Jews who were murdered during World War II. The IDF has dropped thousands of leaflets over the Gazan town of Rafah, instructing residents of a number of neighborhoods to relocate to designated humanitarian zones ahead of a looming offensive. The Iranian-proxy Ansar-Allah, which is dominated by the Houthi tribe in Yemen, pledges to broaden its attacks on maritime shipping in the event that Israel's offensive into Rafah commences. Israel observed Holocaust Remembrance Day today, commemorating the 6 million Jews who were murdered by the Nazis and their associates during the course of World War II. A 2-minute memorial siren sounded across Israel at 10 a.m. this morning, bringing the country to a standstill, including at the locations where the Islamist Hamas and its terror affiliates committed their abhorrent massacre on October 7th.
It is horrible what people had to go through here, and especially to be here on Remembrance Day, and with all what we, the Jews, had to endure along the years. Ever since the world exited, we have been persecuted. This is simply horrible. And to be here is a strength, because we are still here and we are soldiers, and are protecting the country despite everything that happened to us.
Speaking at the ceremony at the Yad Vashem Holocaust Memorial Museum last night, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu seized the opportunity to emphasize that when declaring never again, it is also relevant for today, especially now.
I
want to clarify, never again is now. Approximately 80 years after the Holocaust, after the terrible murder of the 6 million, a third of our people, once again men of evil rose against us, determined by a deep cruelty. They massacred, abused, raped, kidnapped. And I would like to clarify, the dreadful attack on October 7th was not a Holocaust. Not because of a lack of intention to eradicate us, but rather due to a lack of capabilities to do so. The intention was the same. The Nazis sought to murder every single Jew until the very last one. The murderous Hamas are driven by the same exact goal. They murder babies, children, women, men, young and elderly. They do so without blinking. They kidnapped our brothers and sisters and are still holding half of them in the dark basements. We are determined to extricate all of them from the inferno and darkness, those that are still alive, as well as those who've already been murdered. We are committed to return them all home to their families and to bring an end to this prolonged horror. Our hearts are with them.
The Israeli premier went on to voice Jerusalem's resolve in eliminating Hamas, a condition necessary to guarantee that with unrelenting vigilance, the atrocities committed by the Islamist terror groups would never reoccur.
We will fight the Hamas monsters and will complete the elimination of its capabilities. I refer to them as monsters, not only because of their atrocities, but also because they are proud of their atrocious actions. They broadcast their murders live. From a children's room in Gaza, which was utilized as a terror headquarters of Hamas, our soldiers found a copy of Hitler's devilish outlook Mein Kampf that was translated into Arabic. In another house, they found a tablet of a girl with a picture of Adolf Hitler as a screensaver. A direct black line connects between the oppressors of that time to the oppressors of today. However, here is a distinct separation between the Holocaust to our redemption, in contrast to the Holocaust, during which we were helpless in the face of those seeking to exterminate our souls. Today, The Jewish people have a powerful shield of its own. Following the massacre of October 7th, we countered our attackers with war. A war that with God's help will end with decisive victory. Our enemies made a grave mistake. They perceived our society as weak, divided, lacking roots and the power to withstand. They were mistaken. At the moment of truth, we stood united, shoulder to shoulder, filled with resilience, determination, and power.
Amid growing international pressure versus Jerusalem in an attempt to dissuade Israel from launching a ground operation into Rafah, which is the last Hamas bastion in the Gaza Strip, Premier Netanyahu relayed an unequivocal message to Israel's partners and allies around the world.
80 years ago, in the Holocaust, the Jewish people were totally defenseless against those who sought our destruction. No nation came to our aid. Today, we again confront enemies bent on our destruction. I say to the leaders of the world, no amount of pressure, no decision by any international forum will stop Israel from defending itself. As the Prime Minister of Israel, the one and only Jewish state, I pledge here today from Jerusalem on this Holocaust Remembrance Day, if Israel is forced to stand alone, Israel will stand alone. But we know we are not alone, because countless decent people around the world support our just cause. And I say to you, we will defeat our genocidal enemies. Never again is now.
CIA Director Bill Burns is reportedly in the Qatari capital Doha, where he is said to be making every effort to salvage negotiations on a temporary ceasefire, which is reportedly on the verge of collapse. The point of contention relates to Hamas's demand to receive written assurances from Israel that it would fully withdraw its troops from the Gaza Strip and end the war altogether. And while the Biden administration relayed to Hamas that it would guarantee the end of the war on Israel's behalf, senior officials in Jerusalem have rejected that, repeatedly emphasizing that under no circumstances, with or without a deal, would Israel end its counteroffensive absent achieving all of the war objectives that have been set by the War Cabinet in Jerusalem following the heinous massacre committed by Hamas on October 7th. Moreover, the backdrop of the failing talks, the Islamist Hamas launched 10 projectiles from an area adjacent to the Rafah border crossing with Egypt, approximately 350 meters from a designated civilian shelter, toward the area of the Kerem Shalom border crossing, from which Israel transports humanitarian aid into the northern Gaza Strip for the civilian population residing there. As a result, regrettably, 4 IDF soldiers were killed in the attack, while a number of others sustained separate degrees of injuries. And while IAF aircraft responded to the attack by targeting the launcher from which the projectiles were fired, Israeli Defense Minister Yoav Gallant, who toured the Gaza Strip, told the troops to prepare for a wide-scale assault upon the entirety of the Palestinian enclave, including the border town of Rafah.
We have clear objectives for this war. We are committed to eliminate Hamas and to rescue the hostages. We gave a period of time during which we wanted to realize the freedom of the hostages as quickly as possible, including by postponing our operational action, because the hostages are located in a very difficult situation, as well as their families. We must make every effort to release them. We are recognizing concerning indications that Hamas does evidently not intend to reach any outline or deal with us. The significance hereof is an operation in Rafah and the entirety of the Gaza Strip in the immediate future. I toured all of the fields, where I met with commanders during the past several weeks. I closely monitored preparations, and I tell you that we find ourselves a moment before an operation with utmost preparedness. The IDF knows what to do. It is preparing for it. This will include the entirety of the Gaza Strip, from the north to the south. All of the fields, including Rafah.
It is important to highlight that the IDF has already started dropping leaflets in a number of southern neighborhoods of Rafah, informing residents that an IDF offensive into the border town is imminent. Meanwhile, allies and enemies alike are either urging or threatening Israel not to launch its ground offensive against the final Hamas stronghold in the southern Gaza Strip.
We have been clear on our position. We continue to be clear on our position. We've expressed our concerns with a major ground invasion in Rafah. We've been very clear about that, which would have significant risk against civilian casualties. And outline an alternative course of action. We have done that for them, outline an alternative course of action for Israel to dismantle Hamas. So you could imagine, that there's been some back and forth on that.
Along Washington's continued objection to Israel's looming offensive, President Emmanuel Macron held a phone conversation with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, during the course of which the French head of state reiterated Paris's objection to Jerusalem's determined intention to launch a ground offensive into Rafah. Separately, the Iranian-proxy Ansar-Allah, which is dominated by the Houthi tribe in Yemen, proclaimed its intention to broaden its offensive operations against Israel in particular and maritime shipping at large.
We announced the beginning of the implementation of the fourth phase of escalation as follows. First, the targeting of all ships that violate the ban on Israeli navigation, ships that are heading to the ports of occupied Palestine in the Mediterranean Sea in any area that reaches our hands. Second, the implementation of this will start from the time of the announcement of this statement. Allah is great. Death to America. Death to Israel. Curse the Jews. Victory for Islam. If the Israeli enemy launches an aggressive military operation against Rafah, the Yemeni armed forces will impose comprehensive penalties on all companies related to production and entry into occupied Palestinian ports of any nationality, and we will prevent all ships of these companies from passing through the area of operations of the armed forces, regardless of their destination.
Thank you for watching TV7 Israel News. I would like to encourage you to pray for the peace of Jerusalem and salvation of Israel. Moreover, if you're blessed by our productions, which are exclusively donation-based, and as such broadcast free of charge, please consider making a donation. You can do so via our website at www.tv7israelnews.com. Jonathan Hassan wishing you a Shavua Mevorach, and God willing, we'll see you during our next update. Until then, Shalom from Jerusalem.